Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for Tuesday, July 10th. Before we go into our moment of silence, I just want to say a few words about Councilor Testa, who thankfully is still with us. A week ago Monday, he suffered a significant cardiac event and was rushed to Yale New Haven in serious condition, and spent the week in ICU, was released from intensive care on Sunday into the general population of the hospital. He had a very rough week, but he is doing very well, and my information is that he should be home today. So we've all been concerned about him, and we're all very grateful that he's going to be okay. With that, please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Fishbein? Laughlin?
Here.
Materno?
Here.
Marone?
Here.
Morgenstein? Here. Shortell?
Here.
Testa? Zandri?
Here.
Chairman Cervoni?
Here. We've already accounted for Councilor Testa, and I believe Councilor Fishbein is on a vacation. With that, on to the consent agenda.
I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through J.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Letourneau. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. Item 4, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. On to item 5, the public question and answer period. Nothing, Mr. Gross? Okay. On to item 6. Maybe we have. Go ahead.
I move we approve the Wallingford Department of Public Utilities Electric Division Wallingford Renewable Energy LLC generator interconnection agreements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Richard Hendershot, Director of Public Utilities.
What are we doing here?
Well, what you have before you, hopefully, let me confirm that. The council receives copies of the Public Utility Commission meeting packets, correct? So you've got the materials that the PUC had last Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay. The proposed interconnection agreement is in essence the technical and operating compact between the electric division and Wallingford Renewable Energy for the actual facility itself, how it will operate, how each side will deal with the other operationally and technically. It also spells out the fees that Wallingford Renewable Energy will pay the electric division for the use of the electric division's distribution system, and how we will invoice the Wallingford Renewable Energy for site-specific or customer-specific maintenance or activities we might perform. That's the long and short of the agreement. It's a necessary document so that we can allow them to interconnect in the division's electric system, which they need to do to contractually move their energy to the 115 high voltage grid and get to their ultimate customers, which we understand to be Eversource and United Illuminating.
Does this agreement resemble any other agreements that we have to allow power to be generated and exceed our borders?
That's the key thing. Everything else, there are several solar photovoltaic facilities in town. They're orders of magnitude smaller than this one, so we absorb all their energy, and our agreements with those customers are in the form of what's called net metering. These are all behind-the-meter generators, so they initially offset the load of a customer. Over the course of a year, if the facility makes more energy than the customer uses, we give them a credit, a monetary credit. We value that energy on an average worth of it over the course of an entire year, credit their account that much, and then restart the clock for the ensuing year. This facility will technically be a customer in that they will use a little bit of electricity when it's not running, but we will meter them in a bi-directional manner, so when they're not generating, they'll look like a small commercial customer to the electric division. We will bill them accordingly. When they do generate, they look like a small utility scale generator. We meter that accordingly, account for the load, account for the generation that they produce, inject in our system, and we pass it along upstream. So this agreement being open-ended, so likely to be enforced for more than 10 years, needs to come before the council for approval.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Councilor Letourneau.
Good evening, Rick. Just for the folks at home, this is the solar project that is going to go down where the old landfill was.
That's part of the land that they will consume, but yes, it's all at that end of town.
In that
Correct.
general area.
Correct.
And it's something that we've talked about, and we approved this.
My understanding that either Wallingford Renewable Energy or the developer, which is a company called Lend Lease, has negotiated and executed both a tax agreement and a land lease agreement with the town.
Okay. Just I wanted to clear that up because we're talking about, it doesn't say solar in here, so I just want folks to know. And what is the length of this agreement? I went through it and maybe I missed it, but.
It's effectively open-ended. It exists until it doesn't. Because the project has a technical lifetime of at least 20 years.
Okay. So the fees stay the same?
No. What we refer to as our O&M charges escalate at 2.5% a year, mimicking what we understand to be what either the lease or the taxes do. I'm not sure. We checked with Town Hall, and one or the other of those escalate at that same rate, so that's why we chose that.
For however long? It's open-ended, so that's open-ended?
Until it isn't anymore.
Okay. Okay, I'm good for right now. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Questions from the public? Mr. Gross.
Afternoon, Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. So none of this energy is going to stay in Wallingford?
Contractually, no. Physically, it will. But
So will this, so since they're producing it, this will be before the meter. So will this help us on capacity charges?
no, we have to reconstitute this load since we don't have, I don't mean to personalize it, the town/electric division does not have a purchase power agreement with Wallingford Renewable Energy. So we will meter this site, note the energy that they produce, and add that back into the energy that we buy or take delivery of from the high voltage grid. That will have the administrative effect of us taking this energy and passing it upstream, if you will, into the high voltage grid. The purchase power agreement, my understanding, is between Wallingford Renewable Energy and either Eversource or United Illuminating, or a combination of both.
So it'll be it'll net meter for them. It'll take
ISO New
it'll take
England-
off their capacity.
ISO New, if it's, well, I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. I don't know how this is treated vis-a-vis their capacity obligations.
Is there a reason why we didn't get that in this contract, that it would take away from our capacity?
It's not our power. They exist purely because of a request for projects from the state of Connecticut. Projects were then awarded and imposed, my word only, on Eversource and United Illuminating.
So it's gonna, so for them, it's gonna be a cost savings. I mean, they're,
I have
but
no
you're not gonna know the numbers.
I have
but
no idea if it's
If
going
this
to lower
pump,
their prices.
I don't know how
or
much
not.
they're gonna produce, but you probably have an idea what they're gonna produce?
Well, this project is rated at 20 megawatts.
So if we put that into, if we were keeping that in town here and not buying that from the ISO, that would reduce our capacity charges per year. It's some amount, if it was here, if it
Well,
stayed here.
we'd have 20 megawatts of our own generation that we wouldn't need to purchase, but we'd be paying, there'd be a cost to that 20 megawatts, and I don't know what the cost structure of this facility is.
No, I understand, no, but if it was to stay here, I mean, if it was written in the contract that power was staying, it wasn't, you weren't net metering it out where you have to say, okay, they're producing 10, 20, and now we have to tell ISO that that's what we produce, and so now they charge us for the capacity of the 20 megs. Where if we didn't have to do that, then it'd be a cost savings to the electric division. Because you wouldn't be purchasing electricity.
Well,
You wouldn't be metering electricity through the grid.
the owners of Wallingford Renewable Energy know the value of the capacity of the facility. And being a solar facility, it's derated quite a bit because of the anticipated unavailability of the units should it be a hot but cloudy day. And so I don't know what the capacity value of the facility is. I could hazard a guess, but it'd only be a guess. And then they're not going to, if the arrangement were between the town and Wallingford Renewable Energy, they wouldn't provide that capacity for free. They would want to monetize it and receive compensation for it. And so we would offset one cost with another, and I don't know how they would compare.
Okay, but they do have a way of, I mean, battery storage is getting much better now, so there is I don't know whether they're getting
This
rid of.
project doesn't include any battery storage, at least
thought-
not at this time. They might
Okay, so I
propose,
thought
they
some of
might
the
propose
proposals
it later, but it's not in their
Because
proposal.
I thought some of the proposals showed battery storage at one point, and I don't know what time of that was in time frame.
They've not shown us anything with the batteries in it.
All right, because I think that's, well, there's a couple missed opportunities here. One, we should be a partner in this. We should be producing our own solar. It shouldn't be outside. We have the ability to do it ourselves, especially with the funds that the electric division can generate and not produce, and be green and get the cost savings that we're getting. We could have sold it to whatever the Eversource is now and so forth. And we should be able to, if we're keeping the power here, getting it so we didn't have to buy through ISO, that would also reduce everybody's electric charges, because one of the big costs is capacity charges every year, correct? I mean, I think that's one of the larger charges.
Right now, capacity charges are at a peak, those capacity charges go down each of the next 3 power years.
Correct, but we don't know where they're going to be 4 years from now, but they are a
The
large.
auction for the period of time beyond the next 4 power years has not taken place yet.
Right, but it is a substantial number, and these are some ways we could have lowered our electric rates here in town, since we can. We should trump our cards here when we can, and I think we missed an opportunity here. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask Rick, do you see this, would you see this as a way of reducing our energy costs in town? Was that ever seen as a potential course?
I don't know. I don't know the cost basis of this facility. I can't imagine it would have, I doubt it. Given how the capacity of a solar facility needs to be derated. We call it a 20 megawatt facility because that's its maximum possible output, but it would never be credited at 20 megawatts because there's a likelihood that the sun won't be at the ideal angle, the sun might not be out at a time when it's needed, so it would be assigned a capacity much less than 20 megawatts. And as I said, capacity costs, so therefore the value of capacity is going to fall by 50% over the next 3 power years. So you'd run the risk of possibly overpaying for it. The energy that's going to come from this, their need to receive revenues for that energy is going to be dependent upon their cost of construction and operations. I mean, clearly they don't have fuel costs, but they have other costs, so I don't know their cost structure. It's hard to imagine solar energy competing with natural gas-fired baseload generation.
As a general rule, aside from capacity, just the total costs involved, aren't solar projects higher priced energy than other generators?
My understanding is that typically they are. Yes.
Thanks.
Mr. Gross?
Through the chair, possibly to the mayor, and just, solar is here, it's going up everywhere. There has to be, for 2 reasons. 1, it is green, doesn't pollute. 2, it is going to be viable, and it is viable. You have CMAC building large facilities that are solar powered in the state here, and they are the same type of utility that Wallingford is, to not even compare it to Eversource, who has a higher cost structure. They just built a huge solar array, and Mr. Hendershot probably can correct me, Basra or somewhere out in that area. They built, I think, even bigger than what they're building here. It's on an old farm. So if they're building it to get away from ISO and to produce the, buy the electricity, and they're buying it wholesale, there has to be some cost savings. So to make a blanket statement that it's not as cost effective as gas, and remember, once it's built, it's there, as Mr. Hendershot said, could be forever. We don't know. We don't know how long it's going to last. They have a lifespan of 20 years, they say, but they can last longer. And once they're built, very little maintenance on them. I mean, what maintenance are you going to have? So that's the whole thing. And yes, there are cloudy days, but there are ways to capture when there's an overabundance of electricity being produced. Battery capacity is going and growing. So let's not be fearful of technology, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think the facts clearly show for this state, number 1, Connecticut has the highest energy costs in the country. Part of the reason for that is it's mandated that there's a portfolio of purchase of power, and UI and Eversource are required to buy green energy. It's well known that the cost of that energy is higher than the fossil fuel, the nuclear. Obviously, natural gas is part of that. It is a higher cost, but it's mandated by law that they purchase it. It is a subsidized generation of electricity, subsidized by the electric rates of everyone, as well as other sources of revenue. So, for us, our determination is we want to have Wallingford with the lowest electric rates feasible and possible. And to go in the direction of solar is to increase, in general, the cost of electricity, which is not in our interest at this point, given that the state of Connecticut is basically chasing all manufacturing out of the state because of the cost of energy.
But this particular use and contract that we're talking about, that the council's approving, is not going to have an impact, certainly not a negative impact on the cost of energy in Wallingford, am I correct? Okay.
Just one last thing then from Bob Gross, Long Hill Road.
I didn't recognize you yet.
Yeah, it's fine. It's summer. There's still light, no sun. Mr. Mayor, nuclear is very expensive. You had a couple plants that have just gotten mothballed in South Carolina because the cost of building the plants was so prohibitive that other energy sources were lower. Nuclear is just gone. Nobody can compete against it now. And if you leave Connecticut and go to the Midwest, or go to the South, Texas, Arizona, California, even Massachusetts, you'll see tremendous amounts of solar, because it is the wave of the future. their electricity costs are lower than Connecticut's because solar is a cost-effective way of doing things. Thank you.
Bring it back to the council. If there's no comment from the council, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Fishbein, Laffin,
Yes.
Letourneau,
Yes.
Marone,
Yes.
Morgenstein,
Yes.
Shortell,
Yes.
Testa, Zandri,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening. On to item 7.
I move we go into executive session pursuant to Section 1-206D of the Connecticut General Statutes with respect to the purchase, sale, and/or leasing of property.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of going to executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council in executive session. Please kindly clear the council chambers. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, say so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the meeting back in public session. As there is no further business on the agenda, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the meeting adjourned.